Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Max. I'm an account manager at Spirit Public Relations. And I'm here today to show you how to generate positive and effective press coverage to help ensure really good attendance at your BioBlitz events. So Spirit PR is a Bristol-based award-winning PR agency. We work with organisations across the region to deliver both regional and national press coverage. We work in a variety of sectors, but we do specialise in the environment. As you can see from the images behind me, we've actually been appointed the National Agency for the Forestry Commission this year, and we also worked on Bristol's successful bid to become European Green Capital in 2015. As well as the environmental experience, we also have quite a lot of experience in events PR. So you can see there, we used to work on the Bristol Balloon Fiesta, which many of you may have been to. And also, if you were in Bristol this summer, then you may have seen the Grommet Unleashed Trail. If you weren't in Bristol, then it was essentially a sculpture trail of 85-foot grommets, which were designed by well-known celebrities, designers, as well as local artists, and raised over £2.3 million for the Bristol Children's Hospital this year. So we were approached earlier this year by the Bristol Festival of Nature to deliver PR support for both the festival itself and also the Bristol 99 project, which was a 6-week programme of events, which included BioBlitz events in the build-up to the festival to celebrate its 10th anniversary. We generated a real range of coverage for both of these events, including news coverage and a number of features. And we helped to encourage around 12,000 people to attend the Festival of Nature itself over the weekend, which was up 20% on the previous year. And we also encouraged 1,600 people to take part in Bristol 99 events over the 6 weeks. So today's workshop, I'm sure many of you are events managers. I used to work in events myself, so I understand that you're probably trying to do 1,000,001 things at once. And PR is probably somewhere near the bottom of that list, I'd imagine. I don't know. So I want to sort of explain today that PR is not a sort of monster to be scared of. It is something that if you plan it effectively and deliver it effectively, then it can have some really good results and hopefully generate some more visitors to your events. So today's workshop, I'm going to go through how to devise a PR strategy. It is not a question of sending out a press release the day before your event. It's a lot more detailed than that. How to generate effective press coverage. At Spirit, we're really strong believers that press coverage shouldn't be for the sake of it. All the coverage you get should have a purpose behind it. So I hope you to sort of devise that purpose and communicate that in your messages. How to write a press release. I'm sure many of you have tried to write press releases in the past. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it took me quite a long time before I mastered the knack. Once you get it, you'll know it. So I'll give you a few top tips to get a better understanding of that. Then how to approach press. This is still something that terrifies me today if you need to ring up a journalist and try and pitch a story to them. But there's a few sort of easy tips which I can give you again, which will hopefully make that a bit more manageable. So, the first thing that you need to establish is your objectives. You need to start at the end. What do you want to achieve from your press coverage? I imagine for many of you, your objective may be to encourage a wider number of participants in your events. But it may be something other than that. So think around the different objectives you could have. You may want to be a thought leader in the environment in your region, for example, or you may want to make your organisation a thought leader in the environment. So do have a think around what the objectives are, and then you can start planning your campaign from there. So once you know what your objectives are, you need to think about who your audience is. How are you going to achieve those objectives? I imagine you may have fairly similar audiences, so that may be parents, families, school groups, environmental enthusiasts. Just have a think about who they might be. And also think about where they might come from. Are they from the city that you work in? Are they from the wider region? Are they from the city next door, for example? So have a think about where they come from. And then once you've established who that audience is, you need to work out what sort of publications they may read. So this may be news outlets. So it may be your regional newspaper, your regional radio station, your TV station, maybe even blogs, culture blogs, environment blogs, or it could be more features-based coverage. So it could be a regional lifestyle magazine, for example, a regional green magazine, like we've got the Spark here in Bristol. So have a think around what different target media you need to approach to be able to hit that target audience. So then once you've identified who your target media is, It's not just a question of saying, we want to get in the paper, let's send them a press release. You need to think beyond that. If you open up the paper, what different columns are you going to find? You're going to find maybe some features. You may find some image-led articles. You may find some opinion pieces, some letters to the editor. So there's a real range of different things, even just by opening up the newspaper, that you'll find. So you need to be thinking straight away how you could actually try and identify and target those different opportunities within each paper or each different outlet. Again, it's not just about newspapers. You need to think beyond that. So radio stations, for example. Most regional radio stations will have key news programs at the beginning and the end of every day. So that would be the breakfast show and the drive time program. If you've got a really good news story, you could maybe pitch to one of those. However, if you've got more of a features type story, then you could pitch them and maybe try and have a discussion. So find out if there's a key person who's really interested in the environment at your local radio station. So just have a real think about each of these different outlets and try and dig a bit deeper. Don't just look at the surface and say, we want coverage there. Think about more detailed what particular shows, columns you may be able to get coverage in. So once you've established those, you need to think about your key messages. I'll explain why we've got a granny in a minute. So key messages. These are heavily based on your objectives, but you really need to think about the key points that you want to get across in all of your press and media communications. Maybe 1 to 3 different things that you want to focus on. Once you've established these 3, it will really help to focus what your ideas are that you want to get across in the press. But also it will ensure that you have as much control as possible over the messages that you're getting across in the media. And it will help you to ensure you've got consistent messages across different things. So whether it's a news article, a features article, or a radio interview, for example, you'll be able to make sure you're hitting the right buttons to be able to make sure that your audience understand what it is you're trying to get across and what objectives you want to try and reach. So an example key message here, which might be suitable for you guys, is this. We want to chronicle the biological record of the region through our participatory BioBlitz event. I've deliberately put that in language that you guys might use, but somebody else might not. So you can use what's known as the granny test, so that's where she comes in. If you were going to tell this story to your granny, or maybe a man in the pub, how would you explain it to them so that they can understand it? So maybe something like this. We are calling on nature detectives to get their hands dirty and take part in a BioBlitz event to find nature in your neighborhood. So it's simple, it's colorful, and it's memorable. Something like nature detectives immediately evokes image in somebody's head, so they'll completely understand what it is you're looking for. They'll have an idea of a little kid with a magnifying glass running around in the shrubbery. So do have a real think about what those key messages are, and try and focus between 1 to 3 key messages that you want to get across in any publicity material that you develop. So you should now have an understanding of the sort of thinking behind what a PR campaign is, and also how to sort of set objectives and identify your audience and key opportunities and your key messages as well. But now you need to know how to put it into practice, which might even be the more difficult thing. So the first thing to think about is planning. For all these different types of outlet, they will work to different sorts of deadlines. So there's some examples on the board there. So national consumer magazines, these will have the longest deadlines. If you wanted to get in Countryfile magazine, which might be quite ambitious, but it may be realistic, then you need to pitch up to sort of 4 months in advance. I'll be pitching now for the spring. So you really need to think well in advance if you do want to pitch to these national lifestyle magazines. Regional lifestyle magazines, like we've got Bristol Magazine and Clifton Life here in Bristol, you're looking at between 2 and 3 months, maximum of 3 months, a minimum of 2, to try and pitch a story to them. Don't worry, I'll explain more about pitching and feature ideas later on. Newspaper features, around a month or so, you need to get in touch with a newspaper features editor if you do want to try and get a feature in your local paper. It may be that you can pitch a feature and it may run that week, but you haven't got any guarantees, and they may have busy diaries, they may need to set up various interviews to be able to pull this feature together. So do try and leave a month or so for that. And then news stories, I've said 1 to 5 days. It may be that you send out a press release and the following day you get coverage straight away, or it may be that it's going to take a little while for it to come through. So do leave between 1 and 5 days if you're going to be pitching a news story. And then it's not just about when you want to get coverage, but it's also about when it would be most suitable for you to get that coverage. So think ahead. If you're going to want coverage in a weekend edition, for example, if you've got an event happening on the Sunday, then you may want to get coverage on the Friday or Saturday, so that when you've got a family sat around the table that weekend, there you go, I want to go to that. Whereas if you're maybe trying to sell a news story in that you maybe don't have that much confidence in, it may be better to try and sell it in towards the beginning of the week, especially for sort of regional newspapers. They might not have quite as much content then, so if you're pitching earlier in the week, that may be beneficial for those smaller news stories. So this is an example of a PR plan which I developed for the Festival of Nature and Bristol 99 this summer. I find a PR plan is a really essential ingredient in any sort of PR campaign, especially if it's over a number of months. It's just really useful to be able to look on a board and say, what do I need to do today? That's it, I'll get straight to it. You'll see here, we were working on the campaigns for around 4 months or so, between March and June. And I'll just talk you through it very quickly. You've got the dates down the left-hand side. You've got different activities. So this may be pitching a story, writing a press release, sending a press release. And then you've got the subject line. For most of you, this may just be BioBlitz, so you may not need a subject line, but because I was working on both Bristol 99, the festival itself, and on the schools day, I had a few different things to think about at any one time. So I found it useful just to have a subject line there as well. The target press, so who are you aiming to hit through this coverage, is useful. And then target coverage, whether it's a news story, whether it's a features, whether it's an interview. So this is a really nice template to use that you can use whenever you're actually planning your campaign. And all these slides will be available at the end. I'll give you a link, so if you find this would be useful, then it will be available for you. And I just wanted to make another distinction, really, between news and features. You'll see there 2 different pieces of coverage I got this summer. The first one is a news story about the BioBlitz, and the second one is a features story about the Festival of Nature. When thinking about a news story, I mean, we often have clients that come to us and say, can you write a press release for us? PR is a lot more detailed than that, really. You need to think beyond just writing a press release. A press release could lead to really good news coverage like this, but if you think about features, then it could be the difference between having sort of 2 paragraphs of coverage and 2 pages of coverage. So a news story, the key elements of that are PAM. So that's peg, angle, and merit. So the peg is what makes it newsworthy. The angle is what you're inputting into that story. And then the merit is why should people care about this story. So that's the basic ingredients, and I'll come back to news stories and press releases in a moment to give you a few more clues. And then a features article is going to be a bit more general and a bit broader. So it gives you more space to discuss your topic. It could include case studies of maybe a family who took part in the event the previous year. It could include an expert. So if one of you wanted to pitch yourself as an expert on a particular subject, a feature would be an excellent place to do it. And it could have a range of pictures and things in it as well. So a feature, an extended article, which could be about a number of subjects. And again, I'll go on to develop a few of those ideas in a moment. So press releases. If a news journalist is sat down ready to write the story about your news, they're always going to ask themselves the following questions. Any good journalist will do this. And it's pretty straightforward to answer them, to be honest. So who? For example, that could be the Bristol Festival of Nature. What is organising a BioBlitz? When? Next Saturday. Where? At Ashton Court. Why? To explore the area's wildlife. And how? By encouraging children and their families to get their hands dirty and take part. So it's relatively simple, but you just need to ensure that whenever you're writing a press release, you include these essential and basic bits of information. Otherwise, you'll have a journalist calling you up 10 minutes later and saying, I don't understand, can you tell me more? This will make sure you get all that information in there straight away. So that's the basics of it, and then there's a few top tips about actually how to put that into practice and how to make it effective. Because journalists receive hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, and you need to make yours stand out, because otherwise it will go to the bottom of the pile and you'll never see it again. So a few decent tips. I mean, I've been writing press releases for 2.5, 3, 4 years now, I think. And it took me a good year or 2 before I started writing a press release that I could now look back on and say, that's actually decent. It will take a while before you have got your style properly and you're able to write effectively. But as soon as you've got it, you'll have a knack and you'll be able to do it every single time from then on. It's just a matter of practice, really. So a few top tips, really, to make sure it's going to work effectively. Use a strong headline. The headline is the first thing that any journalist is going to see. It's going to be the title of your email. So you need to make sure it's punchy. If you've got a headline that's 2 lines long, a journalist is going to not even read your email. So you need to make sure it's going to be something that immediately makes them want to click. So once they've clicked through, you need to make sure that the first sentence of that press release is going to be strong, and it needs to encapsulate the whole story in that sentence. That may sound challenging, but if you can't encapsulate your whole story in one sentence, you need to clarify what your story is. It's really important to make sure that it can be concise and easily explainable, because otherwise the public aren't going to be able to understand it. So make sure you do tell that story in the first sentence. Then you need to prioritize your messages. I've spoken already about key messages, and you need to ensure that you do include those in your press releases, but you need to prioritize them. Before I was born, when journalists didn't have computers, they literally used to cut from the bottom of a press release. And they essentially do the same thing now. So you need to make sure you get your key messages and the most important things earlier on in the release. You can include additional information later on and in the notes to editors section, but just ensure you've got those key tidbits of information in the early stages of the release. And to be honest, a little tip, journalists will probably just copy and paste your press release. So if it's good, they're more likely to cover it. Journalists can be very lazy. Find an angle. You need to just make sure that you're inputting into the story. You're not just telling people what the story is, but trying to find out how you are significant as an organization to that story. Make copy objective, and quotations can be used for subjective views. A press release never has me or I in it, apart from in those quotations. So if you really want to hammer home a point, make it in a quotation towards the end of the release, is my advice. Include a call to action. Again, this is quite likely to be what your objective is, which is for people to come along and take part in the BioBlitz event. But you need to make sure it's there for people to do. Don't make mistakes. In the past, I've sent out releases, and I've then looked at them in my outbox and gone, oh dear, and it's very embarrassing if you set something out and you see all these different typos and different things in different fonts. All this sort of stuff is really embarrassing, and journalists will pick up on it. As I said, they receive hundreds of emails every day, so they'll know a good one from a bad one. So double check, triple check, quadruple check. Just make sure you're comfortable with it before it goes out. And then include contact info. This isn't just your contact info for the journalist to get in touch on the day or in advance of the story, but it's also the contact info for any possible participants to be able to get in touch. What's the website address? Is there an email address they should get in touch with? Make sure that's in the body of the release, and make sure that your details are after the release has ended. So usually you'll have ends written at the bottom of the release, and then you have notes to editors underneath that, and include your contact details in that. If there's a chance you'll be on site when they might try and call you, put your mobile number in there, because you might not get another chance. If they've left a voicemail, it may be too late. So there's a few tips about writing a press release. I hope that may come in useful at some point. So news stories, as I said, you can get some really good coverage from news stories, and it can have a really good impact on your event. But the difference between a news story and a feature story could be 2 paragraphs compared to 2 pages, and you can get so much more in 2 pages than you can in 2 paragraphs. So again, it's worth thinking around your event. It's not just about following the news story and trying to get a feature based on that. Think about different angles you could take and different approaches you could take, which would make your story and your event relevant to your target audience. So I've got a few samples there for you. You can steal these if you want. These are 3 things that I used to try and pitch this summer for the events, and a couple of them came off. So top 5 hidden sites for nature in your city. That would work really well in a sort of regional lifestyle magazine, and that's something that Clifton Life actually used this summer. It's a really nice visual piece which is relevant to the local area. It may not be specifically relevant to the particular area that you're doing a BioBlitz on, but it will still be really good and show people that the natural world is all around them, even in urban areas, potentially. BioBlitz organizer says we must get children to experience nature. This is more of an opinion piece type article. So this would work really well as possibly a news story or a news-based feature. So you could use that as your main strapline if you wanted to pitch this to a journalist. And it could really work well on maybe radio, if you could have an hour-long conversation about children experiencing nature. So that's quite a good opportunity there, and you could pitch that at radio, possibly at TV, or at your local newspaper. So there's various different ways that you could pitch that particular story. Invite a journalist to take part in a BioBlitz. You're working in something that is really colourful and visual, and something that people can get their hands dirty and get their teeth into. And that's something that journalists love to have. So that story would work brilliantly on telly. I can imagine a TV crew going down to the woods and scrumbling through the overgrowth. It's really worth going for that story. But that would also work in a lifestyle magazine, or in the newspaper, or in a sort of environmental press. So that is one, again, that you could really translate across different types of media. So there's a few different feature angles for you, but you need to think about what your own event is about and how, and think around your event to try and come up with some feature angles of your own that you could pitch to regional press that could be relevant. So if your feature pitching is successful, then you could end up with some interviews, which would be great. But the key part about securing features is pitching them. With a press release, often you will write it, you'll send it out via email, you may get coverage the next day, or maybe you call up to that press a couple of days later, and they may cover it once you've had a bit of a conversation about it. With feature pitching, I always prefer to pitch down the phone first off. It really gives you the chance to speak to the journalist, to sort of establish a relationship with them, and also opens up a line of communication. I mean, I pitched one story, which I think was the top 5 story actually, to another Bristol lifestyle magazine, and they said, I like the idea of nature in neighbourhoods, but how about something different? How about a commuter safari? So we went back and looked into different routes into Bristol where there are really nice nature spots next to them. So if you're going on the local stopping service in Bristol, if you look to your left, there's a really nice green space. So that was something that they came up with themselves, and that was only because I had a phone call with them. They may not have developed that idea, we may not have got the coverage if it wasn't for making that phone call. So I'd always try and pitch on the phone for features first off if possible. It's not to say that email pitching isn't relevant, but I'd always try to do the phone call first. But this goes for both telephone pitching and email pitching. Like with press releases, you need to make sure that the opening line is really strong. You don't want to lose them straight away, and you don't want to be rambling down their ear before they've even got the chance to say hello back to you. So deliver a nice, strong opening line. I actually often write a script for my pitch. It can be really, really helpful just to help you order your thoughts in your own head about what you want to get across to them. You may not even look at that bit of paper when you're on the phone, but it can be really, really useful just to have that as a fallback option. So you've got the key messages you want to get across and the story you want to tell to that journalist down the phone. Do your homework. You don't want to pitch a story to a journalist if it's not of interest to them, because you'll be wasting your time and their time. And who knows, down the line, you might have a story that's relevant to that journalist, and you may have already ruined that relationship by wasting their time. So do a bit of homework. Look into the different journalists that might be interested in your story. And also, you want to show that you've got knowledge of that publication. You don't want to ring up a magazine and say, I know you like to cover X, and they don't like to cover X. So if you can say, for example, if I was to pitch to BBC Points West at the moment, if there's a BioBlitz event happening next weekend, I would say, I know that recently you have renovated your roof terrace and you've now got a garden with loads of wildlife and plants. We would love to go up on your roof and do a BioBlitz ahead of our event next week. Straight away, you've shown you've got an understanding of what they do, what they produce, and you'll immediately be able to build more of a rapport if the journalist feels like you care about their publication. So definitely do your homework before pitching any stories. Pick when to pitch as well. This is something you do need to be careful to get right. At Spirit, we try not to get in touch with any journalists, if we can avoid it really, after 3:30 in the afternoon. This really applies to newspaper journalists, ideally. They will be on deadline, they won't be interested. So you need to make sure you pitch at the right time. If you're pitching to a newspaper, try and pitch mid-morning is a really comfortable time to do it. If you're pitching to TV, then they will have a morning meeting, which will usually take place around 9:30, 10 o'clock, where they'll discuss the stories for the day. So it could be good to actually ring up just in advance of that morning meeting so you're fresh in the mind as they go into the meeting. or it could be good to pitch sort of later on, mid-afternoon maybe, so that you're still fresh in the mind for the following morning. So it's just worth keeping these things in mind when you're pitching. If you're going to pitch to a radio station, if you've got a particular program you want to be on, don't give them a call when they're on air doing that program. They might be busy. And then the final point there is work with the media. You need to be flexible for them. There's a good chance that if you speak to ITV West, for example, they say, we are absolutely chocker on this day. Can you do Thursday? You need to try and make yourselves available for Thursday and try and move as much as you can for them. Who knows, it could be the only opportunity you get to get coverage in this outlet. So try and be flexible and try and suit their needs, not just trying to do exactly what you want to do, because that might not suit them. So again, if your feature pitching is successful, then this may lead to interviews. There can be very few things worse than having a camera in your face. And it can just really make your mind go totally blank, so you really don't want that to happen to you. So practice, rehearse in the mirror. Get your friend to ask you some questions. Get a colleague to ask you some questions. The more you know your subject inside out and can explain it eloquently, the better. So preparation is key. Never have more than 3 messages. I've already mentioned this before in terms of key messages, but you need to really think about the messages you want to get across in an interview before that interview starts. Often journalists, they're not going to be Jeremy Paxman. They're going to be a nice, friendly journalist who wants to hear about ladybirds or something. They're going to ask nice, open questions. So you'll have flexibility within these questions to be able to tailor your answers and move to your messages that you want to get across. Whether that's, we really would love it if you could come along with your friends and family this weekend. You can squeeze that into your messages. But do make sure you've planned what you want to get across and maybe how you'd move towards those from other questions. You also need to understand that journalists, they want the same as you. They want a good story. They've maybe pitched this to their editor. They've spent time and they've spent their own time investing in this story, so they want it to go well. They don't want to go back to the editor and say, here's a story, and for them to just click through the coverage and to have awful clips with sort of you mumbling away. It's not going to work for them. They want the same as you, and often there'll be pre-recorded interviews as well. So don't feel like they're your enemy, they're your friend. They want to communicate the same objectives as you half the time. Bring the story to life. There's nothing worse than a really dull interviewee. I mean, if you watch your local TV station or even national TV news, you'll often see interviewees and you fall asleep whilst watching them, even in a 90-second clip. So make sure you're animated, make sure you are telling the story. So give examples, give anecdotes of where you've had a successful event in the past or where you've had 25 children that have gone crazy around this event. So just think about some nice anecdotes you can bring to that material. You need to understand that, especially for broadcast interview, you'll probably only have about, at most, 90 seconds of time. So you need to make sure that your messages are quite concise and quite clear, because you have not got long to get those across. And body language is essential. If you're mumbling, if your head's down, if you look disinterested, then you're going to fail in that interview, and you're not going to give them material that they want to use. You may get a shorter piece, it may be cut altogether. So you want to be open, you want to be engaged, you want to be smiling, you want to be animated. And then again, the final point again is more specifically for broadcast interviews. Speak in whole sentences. So whenever you've got a TV interview, generally they're not going to include the question that's been asked by the interviewer in the interview itself. So you'll probably need to encapsulate their question in your answer. So don't start it by saying, yes, I think that, no, I think that. You need to try and encapsulate whatever they've asked you in your answer. That's not just repeating it back word for word, but try and be a bit more nuanced than that. So there is a few tips there for if you do successfully pitch and you may get media interviews. So that's just about it. There's just a few extra hints I want to give you here. So pictures say 1,000 words. Increasingly so, a lot of newspapers are going to more image-led material, but also online is becoming more and more significant. So often they'll run picture galleries on websites, and if you've got strong images, it will really help you to get extended coverage. This will also help a lot with lifestyle magazines. They love colourful, big, bright pictures. So really do your very best to get hold of some quality images about your event. If you haven't got good images from a previous event, then make sure you get them this event. And I would recommend spending money on a photographer. You may have a friend who can do it for a tenner, but are they going to be good enough to actually get you that extra 2 pages of coverage in the following year? So really do invest in a photographer, and it could make a real difference going forwards. Advertising can help. Often, if you're speaking to somebody at a regional lifestyle magazine especially, I'll be speaking to somebody on the editorial desk, and then about 10 minutes later, they'll nudge their mate 2 desks down and give them my phone number, and they'll ring up and say, do you want to advertise your event? You don't want it to be a straight no. Have a think about it and see what you might be able to achieve. We had exactly that scenario this summer with the Festival of Nature and Bristol 99, where we were discussing an editorial story. They were quite keen, and then they rang up and said, do you want advertising? They asked us if we wanted to spend £160 for a quarter of a page of advertising, which is quite steep. So what I recommended to the Bristol Natural History Consortium was that they went back to them and said, how about we have adverts for 2 months in advance, one for Bristol 99 and one for the Festival of Nature, and we'll have those for £220. So we had quite a big discount, and also we said, could you also guarantee us a page of editorial coverage as well? I think the stat is that editorial is worth 3 times as much as advertising in terms of how people consume this type of media. So it is really, really valuable to try and get editorial alongside your advertising. So I think because we had quite strong features, we ended up getting about 3.5 pages of coverage in total for the price of about 2/3 of a page of advertising. So it's really worth doing. Another point to make is that their advertising rates are going to drop quite steadily the closer they get to their deadline. So keep pushing them. Leave it late. If you've got your advert design, that's absolutely fine, but keep on pushing them and you'll be able to get that price down quite significantly. So definitely go for that. It's a really good tip. And then finally, social media. It could be a whole other presentation on social media, to be honest. It's a really, really valuable thing to use, but there's obviously so many different methods that you could use at the moment. You've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you've got Google+, you've got Pinterest, you've got LinkedIn. There's probably some more Instagram. So there's so many different methods you could use, but I think what you need to do is decide on which methods are right for you and then just focus on those. You don't want to spend hours updating 6 different profiles every day because you'll have no time left to do anything else. So just prioritize which particular one you want to focus on. At Spirit PR, we have a Twitter page and we have a Google+ page. Twitter is perfect for having conversations, for building relationships and building your profile. If there's particular people or organizations in the region, talk to them. If you're just tweeting about your own event happening in 2 months' time, people are going to switch off and stop following you. So tweet interesting content and tweet to people. Have a conversation. That's what Twitter's about. It's not about just being in your own little bubble. So I think that is all I've got for you on social media, and I think all I've got for you in the presentation as a whole, actually. So, I mean, I should have given you now a decent idea of how to sort of plan a PR campaign, how to develop a strategy, how to set objectives, how to write a press release, how to pitch a story, and how to develop news and feature stories, and even do interviews. So hopefully I've given you a good taste of all those different things. But we have got time for some questions now. So is there anything that anybody would like to ask or anything that I've missed out which you'd like to know more about? Yeah.